Hey guys, one thing that we have been slow to install on the Jeep has been some lighting for a little bit of nighttime riding. Several years back, we had installed a set of Nilight RGB rock lights on Allie's Jeep, and they have been doing great. The functionality is great, the construction of them was great, the Bluetooth module is doing great. We have had zero issues with them. We heard that Nilight had come out with a new Pro series of light, so we took a look at those when it came time to start putting some lights on the Jeep back here. So they come out with a new Pro Nixmen series of lights. So we ordered a set of their 4-inch pod lights with DRL, and we're going to get them put on the Jeep back here, and we're going to see what they look like. Okay, so here we have the W0760. They are the Pro Nixmen series of lights. They have, if you can see, they have built-in DRL right here. I'm telling you what, man, the box is heavy. So I'm going to be pretty impressed to see what these things look like. We have taken the tape off of here, but we have not opened them. So let's see what they take a look at. All right, so right off the get-go, let's see what we got here. Some brackets. Man, they're dude, these things are pretty stout. They're heavy too. Looks like it has all the included hardware. Nylon locking nuts. That's pretty impressive. It's got some Allen wrenches in there. So it looks like it comes with all the tools and everything to set all the Allen screws on. That's pretty good. Let's see what else we have here. Wiring harness. And like I say, these have the DRL in them also. And from what I had read before we ordered them is obviously the DRLs. Oh, there's a bunch of fuses and connectors. Some instructions. That looks great. So here's the wiring harness itself. All covered in insulation here. Oh man, there's some pretty significant size wire too for the power and the ground. And I'm assuming the other wire here is probably for DRL maybe. But anyway, it has a 3-position switch on it. So on and off, and some tape here to attach it. So built-in relay, everything is covered in, looks like, let's see here, let's get this opened up a little bit. So the plug on the relay is actually covered in heat shrink. That's pretty sharp too. Let's see what we got here for the relay. Oh yeah. Pretty significant relay. I mean, none of the components are lightweight. You know what I mean? You just know the difference, right? When you feel those, when they're super flimsy and lightweight. But I mean, the plug is all shrink wrapped and everything. That's pretty sharp too. Put that back on there. Anyway, there's the wiring harness. Everything looks like it's included. Built-in inline fuse holder right there. So that's pretty sharp too. All right, let's get on to the goodies here, the lights. Because these dudes are heavy, man. So here they are. Pretty impressive, I have to say, initially right out of the box. I mean, they are significantly sized. I mean, it's a 4-inch lens, but the body and the housing is... That's pretty tough, man. The heat sink is like monstrous on these things. Their waterproof rating, not right off the top of my head, I don't have the spec on here again, but they are IP rated for waterproofing, so that's pretty sharp. Like I say, the heat sink on these things alone, man, is monstrous. I don't know if you can see the size of that through there. I mean, some good fin for cooling area and everything like that. One thing I can see maybe initially, I would have liked to have seen like a weather lock connector, maybe some kind of a weatherproof connector on here, but that's not a big deal. It's not a game breaker to me. I mean, we'll get the ends put on there, we'll seal them all up, everything should be just fine. But maybe some kind of a Canon plug would have been really, really awesome. But I'm sure they did this because there's so many different installations that you could do with these. I mean, it's not just Jeep specific, right? So anyway, it's very impressive. I think they are quite impressive. The Allen bolt for the front lens plate, significant size Allen bolt. I mean, they look pretty awesome. But anyway, there they are. We're gonna get these things put on. Man, they're solid. That's all I can say. I don't know. Anyways, we're gonna get these things put on here right quick, and we'll see how they do once it gets dark outside. So since we are gonna be installing them on the JK here, we went ahead and ordered a set of their pillar pod light mounts. We have also used those already on Allie's Jeep, so we already knew the quality of those things. I mean, they're fine. They work great. There is no reason for you to spend tons of money on other brackets when the ones that they make from Nilight, they work just fine. So we're gonna get those put on there right quick. It's super simple. It's literally 2 bolts on each side, 2 right there, 2 right there. We'll go get the tools. We'll get the brackets put on there. We'll be right back. Okay, like I say, it's super simple to install these brackets. You literally just remove the 2 bolts right here. There's 2 bolts on the other side. These are a T40 Torx. There is really nothing to it. You literally take those out. Here's the new Nilight JK pillar mount brackets. We have used these before. They're great built. We have had 0 issues with them. They come with the included foam backing plate. It literally just peels and sticks, just like so. Just line it up and stick it on there. Just like so. Anyway, take your 2 T40 bolts out. Alright, just like that. And then you literally just stick the bolt right back in the bracket and put the racket right back on there. It is super, super simple to install these. And what I do is there is a little bit of gap in the bolts. So what I do is I just literally line up the curvature of the bottom of the bracket with the curvature on the cowl right here. So once we got the bolts back in there, we will just literally tighten them right back up. Just snug them back down. Not trying to kill them. Just like that. It's that simple. We'll just repeat on the other side, same 2 bolts out, put the foam back on the new bracket and stick the new bracket back on. All right, so there it is, just like that. Like I say, there's absolutely nothing to putting the pod mount, pillar mount brackets on. Literally, it's just 2 bolts. You pull the 2 bolts out, put your foam backing plate on the new bracket, put your bolts back in there, stick them in there, line them up a little bit. I use the cowl line kind of as a reference, and the windshield line here as a reference. And that is done and over with. So we're gonna move on now to getting the lights assembled and getting them stuck up on there. And I can tell you one thing that's really cool so far is there are actually double holes for the mounting bracket. So you have your center hole right here for the pivot on, and then you have an additional bolt in here to actually lock the light down. Now I like that because so many of these little pillar block, these little pod lights come where they only have a single bolt where you have to twist it and try to get it aimed just right and then lock down a single bolt and they shake and vibrate. So anyway, double lockdown bolts. That's going to be pretty cool. That should help eliminate a lot of the vibration of the lights trying to move over time. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's get the brackets stuck on here. They include all the hardware, the Allen wrenches in there and everything like that. And then we'll move on to the other side and we'll get the lights put up here on the brackets. Okay, so what's cool about the brackets is obviously they have built-in positive locking tabs for your mounting bolt. So you just slide your mounting bolt down in there, and when you go to tighten up the provided locking nut here, that'll keep the bolt head from turning underneath the light. Also on the sides here, you'll notice that it has the built-in indexes right there on the inside and the outside to help lock the bolts down once you tighten them up. So the provided hardware here just comes with a little button head, socket head cap screw. So you don't have to have a washer on there necessarily because it will lock down on the little tabs right there. And also on the inside of the lights, they have the raised positive locking tabs here also. So once you tighten everything up, it is not going anywhere. So the little button head screw here goes in the pivot point, and then we just have some regular little socket head cap screws right here. And that'll be what goes into the slide adjustment point right here. Now it does come with provided lock washers for it. You'll notice that there are no raised tabs, and that's so that you can slide it back and forth easily, and once you get it where you want it, you can lock them down. So let's get the hardware put in there right quick. They send the supply, they send the Allen wrench with it, so you don't even have to go looking for that. So we'll get all that stuff bolted on and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so once you get it all assembled, it's gonna look just like that. You'll see our through bolt is in there. We got our Allen screws in here, our button head cap screws and our socket head screws. And like I say, it has 2 bolts in it. That makes it great. That is going to hold. So this allows it to pivot just like that. And then once you get them set where you want them, you'll have 2 bolts to lock down, which will hold it very well. So let's get them stuck in the brackets and then we'll move on. Okay, so that's what it'll look like once it's installed in the bracket. Like I say, they send the supplied locking nut. There is a washer on here also, and the nut is 11/16. So again, it's a sizable hold down bolt. You know, it's not just a little measly 3/8 bolt that they normally send. I mean, it has a significant size to it. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to get these snugged up just a little bit so that we can turn and adjust the lights later on once it gets dark outside. So we're not going to tighten everything down completely tight. Also, these brackets are adjustable. You can move your lights in and out. So for now, we're just going to set them all the way in the very, very back position, just to get them tucked up against the pillar here just as much as we can. We'll see how the beam does. Later on, we may move them out a little bit like this so we can get a wider broadcast area. But for now, we're just going to set them all the way back. It does make it a little bit easier to use a 11/16 ratchet wrench on this particular step. We're just going to snug our mounting screws just a little bit for now, just to hold the lights while we get them all wired up. And then we'll do our final adjustment once it gets dark. Just like that. All right, so there it is, all mounted up just like that. Like I say, it's a nylon lock nut on the bottom, so it is a little bit long-winded. So that's why I say a ratchet wrench works best to get that thing on right on up there. But there they are. We just got them snugged up for right now. We'll set them finally. We'll do the final set later when it's dark, and then we're just going to repeat right on the other side. Okay, so there they are, all mounted up on the brackets. We got the left side, driver's side and passenger side installed. And once you get them installed, don't forget to take the protective lens coating off. Don't forget that. Okay, on our particular application, being a 2016 JK Rubicon, the cool thing we have at our hands here is we have a bolt-on cowling panel. So we're going to take out the two T30 bolts on T30 Torx head screws on this side, the two T30s on the other side. We can actually move this cowling up and down. And what that'll allow us to do is there's a little space right back here at the back where we can run the wiring inside. And since we'll have plug-in connectors here, that'll allow us to get that connector underneath this cowling panel to protect it from the weather. Really cool on a Jeep. So we're going to get the 4 bolts out, and then we'll move on to getting these things wired up. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to get our wiring harness laid out initially, just to see where it all kind of fits and figure out how we're going to route the wiring and everything like that. And so for the time being, also right now, the on-off switch has a quick connect plug right here. So we are just going to go ahead and unplug our switch and remove it from the harness, and then we will route this a little bit down the road once we get the main harness installed. So the goal here, obviously, for us is the relay and all the battery connections and everything like that are going to end up on the passenger side where the battery is. And then we will have our wire coming out here that will go to the switch. And then we will also have our harness here, which will split off, which will allow us to go to our passenger side pod light and our driver's side pod light. So let's just get it initially laid out and we'll see how it does. Okay, so we've laid our wiring harness out here initially. We just kind of strode it across the engine, and we tried 2 different directions. We tried it with the relay on the battery side, which is the most convenient, and we also tried it with the relay on the other side, and we would just run some auxiliary powering to it. This direction seems to work the best, so we're just going to mount the relay over here, probably on the passenger side firewall somewhere, and then that gives us our battery connections here real close. Now there is an inline fuse holder right here, so we are going to be wiring our connections direct to the battery. That way we can utilize the lights like even when the Jeep is not running. If we're just sitting out on the trails and it's late, dark at night, and we're just chilling, you know. So then what we're going to do is we took the wiring harness and we just ran it. We're just going to run it right up here, right behind the window stripping. And we're just going to tuck it right underneath the edge of the stripping here to hold it. And that way we can run it directly underneath our bolt-on cowling here. And then, like I say, we got the harness tucked right up underneath there. And then we can make our connections underneath there, and that will keep those connections kind of out of the weather so they don't get wet and everything like that. And then the other side of the harness, we literally just ran behind the hood hinges right here, all the way over to the driver's side. We'll get over here so you can take a look at that and see what we're talking about. And the same thing. So then our harness just comes out over here on the driver's side. Same thing, we're underneath the cowling. And then way back in there, if we can get enough in there, we can see. Well, you really can't make it out, but our harness, our pod light here will literally go right through the back here, and we can make our connections underneath here and keep these weather tight as well. So we're going to get our ends put on, we're going to make up our connections on both sides, and then we'll move on to getting that wiring harness tucked in there underneath there safely and get our cowling bolted back down. Okay, so it comes with all the supplied connectors for the light connections. Now, I'm not exactly sure why these do not come pre-installed, so I can't answer this for sure, but I'm just going to base it off of my opinion. My opinion may be that it comes like this because you may have certain situations where maybe you have a different installation configuration or different mounting options, or maybe you have a switch kit installed already where you have wiring harnesses initially, and you know, maybe you have different kinds of connectors on your harness or something like that. So it does give you the option to put whatever kind of connector you want on here. We're going to go ahead and use the supplied hardware that they sent, since our connections will be underneath the cowling. We won't have to worry too much about weathering, but we'll keep an eye on that later down the road. Maybe we'll just change these out to like some 3-wire Deutsch connectors, or, you know, maybe some Canon style connectors or something like that, if it becomes a problem. But I don't see it being a problem with the supplied hardware that they sent. It looks like it's going to be just fine. And we'll get those crimped on there right quick, both sides, and we'll move on. Okay, so we got our connectors crimped on here, and like I say, they do have protective coverings on both sides. Even the this side right here has a protective covering that actually slides underneath the outer shell right here. So I mean, they're pretty good and weather tight, so I don't foresee this being an issue. So I guess it's just personal preference if you want to change them out to maybe a different style connector. But we're going to get the driver's side crimped and connected on, and then we'll get the harness running underneath the cowling. And okay, so there it is. We got the wires all connected up underneath the cowling here. And see right this, like I say, our wiring harness runs right through the back of the cowling, just perfect right there. And whenever we go, we can just put our cowling right back down with the 2 bolts. And that wiring will tuck right through the back there, perfect, and end up underneath here with all your connectors protected from the weather. So we're going to get our bolts put back in there. We'll move on to the other side. We'll get that tucked back up in there, get our bolts put back in there, and that part is done. And so just like that, see, our wiring tucks right nicely back in there. It's not ugly, it's not hanging out. It looks really nice. You can't hardly see it at all. And then we got our 2 screws back in here, our T30 Torx, and we got it all tightened back down. Wires are nice and protected. Okay, so there it is. We got all our wiring installed. We just ran the harness, like I say, just right up behind the weather stripping here. Just tucked it right underneath the edge. That'll hold it right. For now, it worked out fine. We just pulled the wiring loom back here, and we put a self-tapping screw in there to hold the relay. And then I do not recommend this. This is just the way I did it for right now, folks. Again, don't do it like this. I have ordered some battery terminals that have built-in terminal blocks on them so that we can do away with this mess of wiring connectors all hooked to the battery post. I could not get those in time before we were headed out on a very big trip, and I did want to get the lights in there. So for now, I just have the wiring hooked directly to the battery right here on a couple of the nuts on the battery cable post. Again, we have terminal block strips coming, and we can get all these routed nicely. But we have them hooked up direct. There is an inline fuse holder right here, so we are okay direct. But I hooked them up direct because I want to be able to use the lights without the Jeep running. So there it is. That's all the wiring. This wiring right here, we will literally tuck inside this loom right here. We will run all the way across to the driver's side over there, and then we will deal with getting the switch installed through the firewall. Okay, now to the inside of the Jeep. What we're going to do here is, so the switch, so we have an on-off button for the main pod light, and then we have an on-off button for the DRL strip. And you can run any combination of them you want. You can leave the pod light off and run the DRL. You can leave the DRL off, run the pod light, or you can run the DRL and the pod light. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the plug here, and if we can get underneath here, I will show you. Put it all up in here, way up underneath the dash there. You can see it. Well, let me try to get point right up in there. Whoops, wiring in the way. Right up in there. there is a grommet that passes through the firewall. We're going to pass the harness for the switch through the firewall right there, and then we'll connect it onto the main harness in the engine bay compartment. And so here's our plug from the switch. Like I say, we just passed it through the firewall, just right. It's so hard to see down in there, but it's right down in there. There's a grommet where you can pass through the firewall. So all we're going to do now is just get it plugged into the harness on our main connector harness here, and we should be in business to light these jewels up. Okay, so we just got our switch harness plugged back into our main harness right here, and we just got it tucked up right there along the edge of the firewall. It's ran through the firewall, and we're gonna hop here to the inside of the Jeep right quick. We took the wiring harness and ran it up underneath the dash, and we just come out right here below the steering column. We do have a tilt steering column, but we're gonna mount the switch right here on this flat spot, right on the bottom of the column. There's plenty of room in here for the tilt to still work. It won't hit anything or interfere, and it's very easy to get to with our other two switches here for our little light bar that we have. And we do have some Nilight RGB, I'm sorry, they are not RGB. We do have some Nilight just white rock lights here underneath the fenders. Show you those right quick. They're just mounted way up in here. They are very, very dirty right now. You can't hardly see them, but there is some white rock lights underneath there. We just got back from a trip and it was a lot of mud. But anyway, these are also Nilight rock lights. They work great, guys. I have had no problems with them at all. Very bright. So anyway, we're gonna get the switch stuck right on here. Anyways, we do appreciate the Pro Series product here. It seems to be pretty good. We will do a little bit of a long-term review on them, obviously, as we go. But we're just gonna get the switch stuck up right there and see how these things work. Okay, so we got our switch installed right here on the bottom of the steering column. And like I say, the lights are individually controllable. You can have just the pod lights on, you can have the DRLs on, or you can run both at the same time. And we're gonna shine up here. So right now, we just have our parking lights on with our halos. So we're gonna shut those off. Okay, and now we're gonna go for the lights here. So that is just the DRL strips in the pod lights. Pretty bright. Obviously not bright enough to drive around with, but still quite bright. And now we're going to go to the pod light. Bam! Woo! Obviously we're pretty close to the garage door here, so there's not a lot of beam spread, obviously, but once it gets dark outside and we get this thing out where we're not shining on the door, there's probably gonna be a pretty good amount of beam spread out there, and then we'll get them all aimed and everything like that. But again, they are individually controllable, so we can run the DRL. We can leave the DRL on with the pod light, or we can turn all of that off and we can run just the pod light. They are quite bright. But that's it for now. And so far, I mean, they seem to be pretty awesome. They really are a nice quality light. They're Pro Nixmen series. Check them out. Available on that huge online store that everybody buys stuff from. We are not associated with them, so we don't generally mention their name, but we do buy stuff from them a lot. But that's it for now, guys. Check them out. Nilight, give them a chance. We have had really good luck with all of the lights that we installed. Like I say, on Allie's Jeep, we've had them on there for about 2 years now, the RGB rock lights. They work great. Just plain white rock lights on this, they have worked great for over a year. We have beat the holy tar out of them in the weather and the mud, and they just keep on working. They have not lost any of their brightness at all. And so far, I'm really happy with the pod lights. So we'll see how these things do once it gets really, really dark outside, and we're gonna give them a shot. Okay, so just to give you some comparisons, this is just our halos, LED headlights, but have halos. So that is just a halo. There is the headlight. And now we are going to turn on the DRLs. Okay, so that's headlight and DRLs. And here is the pod light. These things are ridiculously bright. Holy crap. And so to give you a comparison, we are going to turn everything off so that you can see just how dark it is down there. And then back to the pod lights. Bam. They are pretty freaking awesome. They definitely light up the sky. And so to give you a different comparison, here is our small little 20-inch LED light bar compared to the 4-inch pod lights. There you go, guys. See you later.